Hello, and thanks so much for joining me for another episode of the Coin Stories podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Brunell, and I'm talking to leading voices in Bitcoin and macroeconomics. Please take a moment to subscribe to my page and like this video so other people see it in their feeds and so that you get my alert notifications for new episodes. And just a quick note, this podcast does not provide financial advice. Before I share my next guest, I have these messages from my sponsors who make the Coin Story Show possible. First, this episode is powered by the Bitcoin Conference 2022. It's going to be held in Miami, April 6th through 9th, and it's going to be the biggest Bitcoin event in the world. All 4 days will be jam-packed with exclusive content, exciting announcements, and an incredible lineup of Bitcoin speakers, artists, and leaders. Day 1 is Industry Day for enterprising Bitcoiners who are looking to build a business or career within the ecosystem. Days 2 and 3 are General Conference Days featuring speakers like El Salvador President Nayib Bukele, who has promised a big surprise at the event, as well as CEOs like Michael Saylor, Elizabeth Stark, Jack Mallers, Adam Back, and hundreds more. The conference caps off on the 4th day with the world's first and largest Bitcoin music festival, Sound Money Fest, headlined by rapper and fellow Bitcoiner Logic. You're also going to hear from Steve Aoki, CL, Run the Jewels, deadmau5, and many more. Last year's conference sold out, and this year's is on pace to be 3 times larger, so make sure you grab your tickets before it's too late. Tickets are selling out fast, so make sure to get yours at b.tc/conference and use the code COINSTORIES for 10% off. This episode is also powered by OKCoin, my favorite place to dollar cost average without the crazy fees. OKCoin recently launched its Crypto for All initiative, and it's aimed at democratizing knowledge and access to Bitcoin. OKCoin is one of the fastest growing and most secure global cryptocurrency exchanges that serves all your needs for Bitcoin and is committed to investing in educational content, funding crypto developers and entrepreneurs from underrepresented groups, and helping more diverse talent work on crypto ecosystem projects and careers. OKCoin has actually contributed more than $1 million to Bitcoin core devs and counting, has one of the most active Lightning nodes, and recently launched Sats mode. You can head to go.okcoin.com/Natalie and use my referral link for $10 in Bitcoin when you sign up. I'm so honored to share my guest today is the one and only Jack Mallers. Jack is the founder and CEO of Strike. He was also one of the key figures in El Salvador's adoption of Bitcoin, and he is a man dedicated to integrity and making the world a better place. I love this conversation so much. You're going to learn so much about Jack, and without further delay, here he is. Okay, well, Jack, thank you so much for joining me. You've been on my dream guest list, and so I'm really grateful for your time. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I'm a fan. I'm pumped, and let's do it. Let's tell some coin stories.
All right. Well, so we're sort of from the same area. I grew up outside of Chicago as well. So I wanted to hear a little bit about your upbringing and your childhood. What was it like to be the young Jack Mallers?
I actually did not grow up in Chicago. I grew up right outside Chicago in a city called Evanston, Illinois. It's actually the campus of Northwestern University. It's about a 30-minute public train ride to Chicago. So I was right outside. And it's a super interesting city. I actually accredit a lot of my attitude, my personality, and early learnings in life to Evanston. It's very unique in how diverse it is. It's kind of a mix of North Shore, lakefront, families, and then also it's one of the more diverse suburban North Shore cities in Chicagoland. So I got to experience, I was on the chess team, I was on the basketball team, got to experience all walks of life, different learnings. So super cool city. Born and raised, and my heart is in Evanston, Illinois.
You know, it's so funny. I went to grad school at Northwestern, so I spent a little bit of time in Evanston. Yeah, it's beautiful.
There you go. Yeah.
A little cold for me, but you know, it's a beautiful town.
It's all mental.
So tell me a little bit about your family, because, you know, I know that your grandfather and father have such a legacy, right? Especially in Chicago and in the business world. And I'm kind of curious because sometimes when I meet people whose parents or grandparents were very successful, they feel, you know, a pressure on themselves, like they have to kind of live up to that. So tell me a little bit about them and if that had an impact on you at all.
Yeah. So I've seen on Reddit and on Twitter all sorts of theories about my family. It is true. My grandfather was the youngest ever chairman of the Chicago Board of Trade, which is now, by the way, the CBOE. So that does not exist anymore. So he will forever be the youngest chairman ever at Chicago Board of Trade. He also did factually sign the funding check for the CBOE. However, it was not on his personal behalf. He was not an angel investor, and the Mallers family is not worth $1 trillion. He wrote it on behalf of the CBOT. But what many people probably don't know is my grandfather died with no money. My dad didn't inherit anything. It was kind of that generation's culture as what was described to me. Unfortunately, my grandfather passed away when I was in elementary school. So he has I've seen that my grandfather is the reason Strike is successful. I wish that were to be true. I could really use his help. Founding and running Strike sometimes is very difficult, but he's not with us anymore. And that generation was really hard-nosed. There was never, my grandfather, to what I understand, never had an ambition of building generational wealth or anything like that. He was just kind of, those guys founded the agriculture derivative market, running cards in the pit, that kind of knit, grit, salt of the earth, brick by brick, like man of his word type of attitude. And money was never really important to them. And so any money he ever had, he spent it right away.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, he ended up moving to Florida after his trading career ended. He had no interest in carrying out the legacy here in Chicago or overseeing the CME. He was like, oh, I'm not trading anymore. Fuck this. I'm going to Florida. And it was my dad and my grandfather. So the way the Mallers family story goes then is my grandfather helped found First American, which was my dad's discount futures brokerage. And so my dad then ran it and ended up being the CEO all the way up until he sold to Man Financial. And so when First American started doing really well and my dad was doing well, my grandfather just retired, went to Florida and was like, you can send me my dividends every earnings and I'll just live out here on the beach. And that's what happened. So all that I know and my true hero, and if anyone in my family gets any credit for anything I ever do, all of it goes to my father. I was primarily raised by my dad. He's my hero. And yeah, I don't know if that demystifies any of the myths, but I was not really handed so much of like a silver spoon. And my grandfather was the chairman of the Chicago Board of Trade, but by the time I was alive and old enough, the Chicago Board of Trade didn't exist. And he was in Florida and then unfortunately passed away. So anyway, yeah, I'll stop there.
Well, so your dad being a successful CEO, did you kind of have a concept when you were young that, hey, I don't really have to worry too much about money? Or what was your relationship like with money and what did you want to be when you grew up?
Not really. I mean, no, my dad is the smartest guy I've ever met in my life. And we can get into the story of how I got into Bitcoin. It's all credit to him. He is my hero. He's a model man, in my opinion. But no, he drove a 99 Dodge Caravan SUV my whole childhood. I did not get dropped off at school in a Porsche. And I never had a concept of needing to stress about money, but no, I had summer camp counselor jobs. I made all my childhood money winning chess tournaments. And what my dad instilled in me, and it came from my grandfather, is a Mallers is always, you're the first to a loose ball, or you're the first to help the teammate up that was. You never renege on your word. You never tell a lie. And one of the things I instill into the company at Strike that my dad told me is the difference between a man and a great man is the ability to commit to doing what's right, no matter how hard it is. And sometimes in life, you will encounter decisions that are hard, but almost all the time in life, you'll know what's right. And that is a good person, is a commitment to do what's right no matter what. And you can see that probably in a lot of my career work and things like El Salvador. So anyway, I did not have a concept of I need to be successful, or I need to be this, I need to be that. I was raised by a guy who cared much more about his personal relationships and a man of his word and being helpful than about being anything to do with success or stature or anything like that. And by the way, my dad was retired by the time I entered the sixth grade. So, I mean, he sold, I think this is all public. So he sold First American to Man Financial, I feel like in the early 2000s. And he was just a full-time dad. So he like, for people that think that he's been at the CME board meetings my whole life and that I know how financial contracts work because I was sitting with the CME board, is also not true. He retired. He wanted to just be there. As he coached every single of my sports teams. He came to every single parent teacher conference. He's been a full-time dad ever since I can remember. And so anyway, yeah. And I wanted to be the point guard of the Chicago Bulls. I nowadays I am 5'8" and 150 pounds, and I don't think I'm growing anymore. So that dream died when I realized I wasn't going to be 6'5". But growing up, before I was anything else, I was a tremendous athlete. I was always the best basketball player, best football player, best baseball player, best chess player. And I wanted to get drafted by the Bulls and play point guard. That was my childhood dream.
Well, of course. I mean, the Bulls, that was like the glory days back then, right?
Close. So Jordan won majority of his championships in the 90s. I was born in 1994. So by the time I could remember, Jordan was gone. But the Derrick Rose era was really fun. If he didn't get hurt, we probably would have had a couple. But yeah, I grew up the most competitive kid you've ever met in your entire life. And I wanted to play professional sports. I want to play for the Chicago White Sox, Chicago Bulls, Chicago Bears. And then when I got really good at chess, I wanted to be the world chess champion. And then somehow I've stumbled into where I am now.
Well, I want to ask you a little bit more about sort of your competitiveness, but first, it's really inspiring when I hear you talk about your dad and your family and just how much integrity there is there and putting so much significance in personal relationships and being a good person. And I don't know if you know the answer to this, just off the cuff, but, I'm just kind of curious, where do you think that comes from? Because especially people who are successful in the business or corporate world, there's sort of a negative, there's a negative impression that I think people have of that world and that everyone's really cutthroat and competitive and out for themselves. And you're kind of painting a completely opposite picture of, basically men that are dedicated to family and being, good people. So where do you think that comes from? Did you hear stories about why they might be that way?
Yeah, I was my grandfather for sure. From what I was told, again, I didn't have much of a relationship with him, at least that I can remember. But one of my favorite stories is when my grandfather was building the Chicago financial industry that we know today. But again, in the sense that he was with his bare hands building these markets and trying to understand how he could transfer risk away from the corn farmer and build derivative products that allow for that type of risk transfer. And the Hunt brothers, these were West Texas, I believe, Southern big money traders at the time. They were looking to corner the silver market. For those that don't know what that means, it's when you have an ability to manipulate the market. They had such an outsized silver position that they would be able to control the price, and they were looking for an exchange. They were, if you've ever seen the movie Wolf of Wall Street, doing the same type of shoe-hole trading where they would hide their positions in family members and in friends. And so you couldn't actually tell how much they held because anyone that held silver at the exchange could have been associated with them. They could be what in the Wolf of Wall Street called rats, right? And so there were rumors they were out to corner the silver market. They were looking to exercise on their big position. They were looking to manipulate the price. And if you're an exchange owner, like we see today with all these shitcoin casinos, you don't care whether people are manipulative, whether they're scamming, whether they're violating securities law. All these guys are just looking for trading volume. These people are hiding in the Bahamas or the Bermuda or the Seychelles or the Hong Kong. They're just looking to wash volume through. They don't give a fuck. My grandfather did give a fuck. He said, you're not going to paint this city and this market here in Chicago that way. We hold high integrity of our markets. Our markets are not cheated. They're not manipulated. Everyone has fair right to fair pricing. And we hold integrity here in this city. And he got to the bottom of it. He called the Hunt brothers and said, I will freeze all of your assets if you don't show up in my office the next day. They did. He got to the bottom of it and he ran them out of Chicago. And the Hunt brothers went on to manipulate the silver market for a little bit in other exchanges, but it was not going to happen in Chicago. And that's because my grandfather, and in that moment is exactly what I'm describing. He could have probably made a lot more money. He could have probably built a relationship that got him places and been friends with the Hunt brothers. Wasn't what it was about. It's about being a man of his word, protecting integrity, protecting what he built. And also, I mean, you can see it now. I mean, I've talked a lot about leaving a legacy as a human being. The greatest invention of life is death, and knowing that you're going to die is really important. But his work has lived on till today. Chicago still is high integrity market, and it has that type of relevance compared to something like Wall Street in New York. And you can see it in my work. You could see it in my father's work. You could see it in all these prop firms in Chicago that got into Bitcoin long before Wall Street did. The CME had a public product long before anybody else. So that's my favorite story, is my grandfather told the Hunt brothers to fuck off.
Amazing. I mean, it's interesting because why do I feel like that's so rare, especially nowadays, to feel like someone really does have integrity, especially in the business or corporate or finance world? It's almost like this shouldn't be that impressive that like someone would do the right thing, but yet it is. Why do you think that the world is that way?
Geez. I don't know. Human beings are complicated. I mean, one of the other things my dad always told me is, you shouldn't try and understand market volatility. You should just trade it. I got trading slogans and phrases for days. No, don't try and understand it. Just trade it, because the thing that truly backs markets are humans, and the things humans are comprised of are emotions. And we've yet to understand those. So it's going to be really hard to understand why the market goes up or down. You should just trade it. Learn to trade it, not understand it. And so I don't know, why are humans complicated? I'll have to go back and get a degree in psychology or something. I have no clue. But no, it is like a really important, and it's not just the Mallers family. This is the city of Chicago. Why have I not left? And I don't know, where's everyone moving? LA or Miami or whatever. Because this city raised me. That Bitcoin and Chicago is what raised me and made me the man I am right now. And yeah, it's the same thing with my dad. I mean, my dad did really well, sold his discount futures brokerage to Man Financial, which was a big deal at the time. And he bought a minivan and made sure he was at every single one of my sports games. It was never about, growing up to the top or becoming the chairman of anything. That's just a good dude. And our house was, my dad is one of the more unsung heroes. He's funded Bitcoin Core contributors. He funded a lot of my early work. That's the type of guy we are here in the Mallers family. Anyway, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I love listening to these types of stories because my family is really about doing the right thing as well. Like it's not worth it to, stomp on other people just to get to the top. Like you have to be a good person. A lot of that derives from my family has a really strong faith, and they just always felt like you have to be a good person and do the right thing. And so I appreciate when I hear that in others, because especially when you look at success stories, it's always a lot more inspiring when you know that the person has a good heart and cares about other human beings. And honestly, that's what I see in the Bitcoin space so much. I've never seen an industry where people actually genuinely want the world to be a better place, want the world to be a more fair place. And not in the sense of like just handing everyone money, right? But like, what do you contribute? Like you should have the opportunity to, make your life what you want it to be and take care of your family. And it's one of the reasons I love Bitcoin.
Yeah, I've said this on other podcasts. I think inherently as a human being, you want two things. You want to be a part of something bigger than yourself. And that's just the notion of not living life alone. I think inherently you want to fall in love, you want to reproduce, you want to build a family, you want to build a company, you want to be part of a company, you want to play on an intramural basketball team, right? It's the concept of building relationships. And then the other is you want to build something and contribute to something that will last longer than you will. And that's that idea that the only promise in life is death, but that you can leave a legacy and that your work can outlive the promise that you won't live forever. And I think that that's been part of the Mallers family, right? The work in the Chicago markets, the work in risk transfer, agriculture, derivative products, and then now in Bitcoin. And yeah, humans are tool builders. It's the Steve Jobs quote, right? Where if you measure the efficiency of locomotion in primates, humans are rather unimpressive. But if you remeasure it with the human on a bicycle, we blow everything out of the water. And what does that tell you? It tells you that we're inherently tool builders. And the coolest thing about our species is 100 years ago, life was way worse than it is today. And 100 years from now, life will be way better than it is today. That's one of the rare guarantees that our species has. And so it's just the notion of contributing to the world, contributing to our species. And it's not about climbing on other people's back to get any higher. I'm going to die anyway. It's about doing the right thing, pushing the world forward, standing up to the man, no matter how hard it is, and fighting for what's right. And that's what I do professionally. Yes, and I enjoy it. So
yeah, you're doing amazing things. So I want to hear more about your company, all the great things that Strike is doing, and your Bitcoin journey. But first, just out of curiosity, because I know you've said on another podcast, I think it was Peter McCormick's, that, you know, when you were growing up, you were very close with your dad, you were very competitive, and everyone wanted to come to your house, right? Like everyone wanted to come over. Everyone was playing at your house because it had the trampoline and this and that. Why were you so competitive, and what was it like kind of growing up?
Oh my goodness. I wish I had some of my childhood friends on here for reference. It's true to this day, by the way. I am the most competitive kid of all time. It's my favorite is in beer pong. Beer pong is usually like a social event for people. Maybe you're looking to meet new friends, meet a significant other, listen to good music, and it's just a different way to consume alcohol. For me, I'm the best. I consider myself the best beer pong player in all of the West, and I'm there to win. I'm there to anything I do to win. I optimize my life around always getting better every single day. So whether it was childhood basketball, baseball, football, chess, beer pong, didn't matter. And that's a tough guy to be around. A lot of people were like, dude, you got to chill, man. I'm trying to have a good time. I'm not. I'm trying to win. I'll let you know when I'm trying to have a good time, but I'm rarely trying to have a good time. I'm trying to be a winner. And yeah, so some people don't like being around that kind of guy. Some people love it, right? It's the old saying, when he's your teammate, you love the guy. When he's your opponent, you hate him. So I grew up kind of like that. And yeah, my house was I have hilarious stories about my childhood house. Every single Friday, there'd be at least 50 friends over before I even got there, at least. So for those that don't know, the Bitcoin mom, who she's my stepmother, not my real mother. So for a while in my childhood, I was raised by a single dad, and he was like, yeah, I don't know, like, I'm retired. We got trampoline in the back, basketball court, Xbox is on. And all my friends in middle school, all of them, there was no person left behind. That's why Evanston was so diverse. It was so cool. Everyone from the chess team and the basketball team and in the math club, it didn't matter. I mean, I was friends with everyone, and we would even scheme ways to ditch class. This part my dad didn't know. We would ditch class to try and get to the house first, because if you stayed in class the whole time and you stayed after and asked your teacher a fucking question, then the bourbon chicken was gone and you weren't going to get any of the fruit roll-ups were gone. And so we would scheme ways. Like I remember one stretch, a few months, we would pretend like this one particular kid, he tore his ACL or some injury with his leg. Sorry, couldn't. And so we would limp over to my mom's house, which was closer to our middle school than my dad's house. And she would drive us because this kid's leg was hurt. But of course, he wasn't actually injured. And that was our way. So that way I didn't have to ditch class. But I was beating the kids that were ditching class because they were walking. So anyway, it was kind of like a childhood frat house in a way. I don't know.
Okay, wait. So like, what's with the chess obsession then? Because you were going to go to college, right? To play chess, and you were in school for, I think, like 45 days. But tell me, can you share the stories of like you playing in the park and being really competitive in chess? Because that was really interesting to me.
Yeah. Another thing, part of my childhood. I hope the audience is enjoying these stories, because these are not about Bitcoin. But another part of my childhood is, as you get older and into your later teens, kids, at least in my hometown, start experience with weed and alcohol and whatever nefarious activities as they become an adult. I did not. And I did not because of any other reason than I told my dad I wouldn't. My dad always looked at me and he's like, "You make mistakes. Things are going to happen. Life's complicated. Don't lie to me. Don't lie to me. I'm never going to be mad if you fail a class, if you're not interested, if you drop out of college, right? I'm not going to be mad at you. I'll love you, but just don't lie to me." It's hard to build relationships based on lies. And so I told him, "Okay, done. I'm not going to allow people to do that in this house, and I'm not going to do it." And so I didn't. And as my friends started to go to parties and stuff, I wouldn't go. Man of my word. And I actually ended up taking the 30-minute train ride that I talked about early on from Evanston into Chicago. And I would play chess every single weekend at the Chess Pavilion on North Avenue Beach in Chicago. It's where all the homeless play chess in Chicago. And this part is pretty hilarious. We would kind of fuck over tourists. Tourists would walk by and like, "Oh, I'd love to play a game," right? It's summer in Chicago. Chicago is the best city in the world in the summer.
Yeah.
And yeah, 100% hands down. And so tourists come by, "I want to play a game." And they'd look at, the more experienced, elderly, homeless, and the homeless guys are like, "Hey, $5 a game, $10 a game, $50 a game." And they're like, "No, I don't want to play you." And they would turn to me because we were all friends. I was friends with all these guys. Like, "Well, would you play this little 15-year-old, 16-year-old kid?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll play him." They're like $5 a game. And I would just destroy them. And then I'd split the money with whoever referred the game to me. And so I ended up building a balance over the summer, close to like $1,000 of just cash winnings of just like beating tourists and gambling in the parks in Chicago. And that's a true story. So I was not drinking with friends and stuff. I would wake up at like 8 a.m, train into Chicago, play chess until about 8 p.m. And that, by the way, is like the type of trust and the relationship my dad and I had. I think other parents would have never let their kids play in public city parks with homeless people till the wee hours of the night as a 14-year-old boy. But that was kind of the diverse type. My dad gave me all, I don't know. So that was a lot of my childhood. And
I'm literally picturing scenes from the Queen's Gambit. Did you watch that show?
Yeah.
So you went to school, but then you decided to just leave college and you ended up taking a coding class, right?
Yeah. So by the time everyone was applying to college, I didn't know what I wanted to do in life. I was a terrible student, Natalie. Like, I was sent to the dean's office constantly. And my dad was always really confused because I could beat a professional chess player blindfold as a teenager, which is clearly like, whoa, what's going on in that head? But I didn't care to read a book. Every time my teacher, I was a class clown, just didn't give a fuck. I just didn't understand why any of this was important. Like, why am I reading Shakespeare? This shit's boring. And it just didn't matter to me. And so by the time everyone's like, "Well, I got into Harvard, I got into Stanford." I'm like, my grades aren't good enough to get into that shit. And I don't want to go to that shit. And so I was like, fuck, but it societally, you're like, it's a homework assignment. Like, you got to figure out what you want to do with your life. I'm like, fuck, okay, well, if I have to pick something, maybe I can be a professional chess player. And so I applied to St. John's University, which is in New York. And the reason is because New York's the chess capital of the world. and they gave me some scholarship money, and I went to play chess. And they have a very famed professor who runs the chess club that Bobby Fischer was raised in, and I was going to go play for him and all that shit. And once I got there, it was a story as old as time for Jack Mallers. I didn't attend any of the classes. I ditched every class, and I would train from Queens, New York, where my dorm was, into the city and play in Washington Square Park, Times Square. I was just playing chess, made friends with the like local chess community, the homeless chess community there. And I didn't go to class. And that lasted, actually got into an altercation with my roommates and called my dad 45 days in, 30 days in. I didn't get a credit. I know that much. So I wasn't there long enough to actually like take a final. And I called my dad. He was like, dude, you're such a fucking idiot. Just like get home. So I slept at LaGuardia Airport because it was the middle of the night after a fight with my roommates. And I slept at the airport, woke up in the morning, caught the red eye to Chicago, and I just never went back to school.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I remember this story, and your dad had a conversation with someone, right? That like college isn't for everyone. And certainly not everyone should go to college. They should build skills. And so for you, you were interested in computers, right? And that was sort of part of, you wanted to build something chess related. So what was that story? Because it ultimately led you to Bitcoin, right?
I wish that was the story. I wish I was into computers. I didn't know anything about computers. It's actually, what's so funny is like the evolution of Strike is really interesting, and like reading some stuff on Reddit is super funny to me because no one gave a fuck about anything I was doing back in the day. The reason I actually went to LaGuardia, slept in the airport, is I was going through a tough time. I was sitting in my college dorm playing chess. If I wasn't, I was sitting in the parks playing chess. I wasn't making any friends. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. Like the famed college dropout turned entrepreneur. I hadn't founded Facebook, and I was leaving college to go to Silicon Valley and hang out with Peter Thiel. It was the opposite. I had no idea what to do with myself. I was kind of like ashamed because everyone else was going to get a business degree and was super passionate about being an accountant and stuff. And I had no idea what I was going to do. And I remember my roommates in college walked into my dorm room and took all my shit out of my fridge to host a party for a bunch of girls that they were having over. And I was like, hey, put that back. Those are mine. And they were like, no, why don't you just go play a little bit more chess? And I got up, they shoved me, I shoved them back. And then that's when I just grabbed my necessary shit. Everything else I left behind, called my dad. He was like, dude, get the fuck out of there, man. You're an idiot. And I went to LaGuardia and slept. And so when I got home, no, I had no experience with computers. I was such a bad student. I didn't even know like how to work Microsoft Word. I had no idea. It was, I was reapplying to schools. My intuition was, let's just go to college where my friends are going. Because at least then I won't just be hanging out alone with homeless people in the parks of New York City playing chess for money. Why don't I go where my high school buddies went? So Midwestern state schools, U of I, Wisconsin, Iowa, right? And it was my dad's friend who's an Apple engineer. And he's a chess player too. And he would come over all the time and I'd beat him blindfold. I'd kick his ass. And he was like, Willie was my dad's nickname. Willie, this kid's smart. School's not for everyone, man. Don't send him back to school. He's got no business there. And if, he needs a few years to figure it out, I think kids call those gap years nowadays. Who fucking cares? Send this kid to learn to code. He's like, I'm an engineer and a chess player. And if this kid's this good at chess, engineering, he could be good at. And engineering is like a weapon, Willie. And this was before this is now deemed like a fact. But back in the day, it was like, Willie, the engineering's a weapon. This kid can write code. It's got similar like calculation and seeing yourself forward and tool building. And then it was him who referred me into a coding boot camp. It was a 3-month coding boot camp. But at the time, not only did I not know how to code, I didn't know how to use a computer, Natalie. So that was January. It was late 2012, early 2013.
That's so interesting. For some reason, I thought after the chess thing, you were like, oh, I want to maybe do coding, but it was someone who kind of moved you into that direction. So tell the story of how you came home though, right? Because when you were doing that coding boot camp, someone mentioned Bitcoin, and then you went home and said it to your dad, but your dad already knew about Bitcoin, right? So what's your Bitcoin story? Because it's really tied with your dad and your mom, right?
Yeah, and potentially even my grandfather, if you really want to stretch it, because of the culture that lives here in Chicago. Chicago is about honest, true, fair markets. It's about doing the right thing. It's about high integrity. It's not about cornering markets. It's not about cheating the guy next to you. It's not about backdoor agreements. Fuck that. We drive 99 Dodge Caravans, and we pride ourselves on being like men of our word. I'm not here to get an edge up on anyone else. I'm not here for a cheat code. Don't be afraid to put in the work. Don't be afraid to do what's right, no matter how hard it is. And so Chicago got Bitcoin way faster than any other city in America. All these guys, the CME, Don Wilson at DRW, which spun off into Cumberland Mining, Jump Trading, CMT was the very first check into Strike. I mean, all of these the Chicago culture, which my grandfather really started and embodied and instilled in this city, is the reason they got Bitcoin first. So around the time I was dropping out of school and was a little bit lost, my dad was getting into Bitcoin and was starting to build his Bitcoin position. And so were all these Chicago traders. Everyone got it right away. My dad, for reference, before he started his discount futures brokerage, was trading currencies in the pit. And so he also understood that this thing was currency like, he was like, this is he was trying to envision, he's like, how would this trade in the currency pit? Because it's not issued by a government. He was like, this thing is fucking unbelievable. And he knew, like, if you're running a discount futures brokerage, you got to, your clients post collateral, then you got to call them on their collateral. You got to settle with them and bank wire transfers. And he's like, this thing is pristine collateral. This thing doesn't live with a par. Like, he got, like, all these guys, I swear to God, I'm looking at the Chicago skyline. All these guys got it right away. They got it right away. And so anyway, it was in my kitchen. He kind of sat my stepmom, the Bitcoin mom, down and told us about it. I had no idea what he was talking about. Neither did my stepmom, but he had convinced her to register the handle, the Bitcoin mom. And the reason for it is he was like, people are misunderstanding this thing. I'm telling you, my dad is the most unsung hero in Bitcoin. He's a legend. He'll never get the credit he deserves. He's my hero. He's like, people, this is 2013, Silk Road, Gox, that type of era. It was 2013. And he was like, Brooke, people think that this is for drugs. People think it's just like the internet. It's not. And the Bitcoin mom is a great, fun Twitter handle because moms can be into Bitcoin too. And he convinced her to register. It was like his way of trying to warm us up to it. And so she had registered the Bitcoin mom handle. He would talk about it nonstop. We'd watch Monday Night Football, and he's such a good trader. He was just picking apart the markets on wherever this thing was trading at the time, Mt. Gox or whatever. I would watch him on his iPad. We're watching Monday Night Football. I'm a college dropout. My dad is just picking the markets apart. He was, I think, he was one of the first Zappo customers and one of the first GBTC customers. I remember I'd go to boxing class with him in the morning. He's like, you can't just live in my basement. You're not a loser, man. Don't let college let you think you're a loser. You're a smart kid. You're a great kid. Come to boxing with me. We'd go to boxing, and after boxing, he'd let me trade his GBTC position. So I was slinging around GBTC in like 2014, 2015, whenever it came out. And so he was so early. Anyway, and you're right. Then I went to my coding boot camp. One of my classmates was building a Bitcoin wallet, and I ran home. I was like, Dad, you'll never guess. I got a classmate that's also into this Bitcoin thing. And then fast forward again, I came home from school, and Andreas was in my living room. These stories are more known, but all of that is super true. We'd be watching Monday Night Football, and we'd be talking about Bitcoin, or we'd be throwing baseball in the front yard, and we'd be talking about it. And he'd be like, put the gloves down. We got to go buy more. And we'd run into the house and log into Zappo, buy. And then we'd trade GBTC, and he'd he's like, now this, you could see, he'd teach me to read an order book. You could see when buyers are weak, or this guy's trying to scare you with this wall, this bid. And I was trading GBTC as college dropout, and obviously got into engineering, and yeah, so.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and hear from one of my other sponsors, iTrustCapital. Did you know that you can invest in Bitcoin right in your retirement account? iTrustCapital allows you to invest in Bitcoin and other digital assets with the tax benefits of an IRA. And unlike the stock market, you can buy and sell 24 hours a day. So instead of paying taxes on your crypto gains every year, you can defer taxes until you retire using an iTrustCapital crypto IRA. Or with an iTrustCapital Roth IRA, you can withdraw tax-free at retirement. With iTrustCapital, you can buy and sell Bitcoin 24/7 from a crypto IRA and get all the same tax advantages. The iTrustCapital platform is easy to use, and it only takes a few minutes to create your free account. To start investing in your Bitcoin retirement today and get a $100 referral bonus using my link, head to iTrust.capital/Natalie Brunell. Now back to the show. It's so incredible to me, the people that got it so early, like your family. I mean, because we weren't in as bad of a situation as we are now with the money printing and debasement. And, I mean, just the macroeconomic environment right now is, I feel like, such a spotlight on the need for Bitcoin. But back then, I mean, it's just so impressive that you guys totally saw the value, and you, not necessarily having an economics background, you saw it too. You saw a future for this.
Yeah, I think I think we all tend to focus on the now to justify. So you're right. Obviously, I think it goes without saying, the macroeconomic backdrop today, the geopolitical backdrop today, what happened in El Salvador, everything is good for Bitcoin. That's the Mato Del. Everything's bullish. But people don't remember, what about the Cyprus crisis? That was a huge thing for my family and my dad. The Cyprus crisis was another where my dad was like, this thing, it's over. It is over. And it was like, this is the only asset that these people can hold. And it was in those type of moments. And I've lived through now a lot of them. I'm coming up on 10 years in the industry. And it was those type of moments where my dad would sit me down and explain to me, like, think of another asset that the government couldn't seize, the government couldn't stop you from custodying, that you were able to transfer digitally so it wasn't under your mattress or anything. I mean, so 10 years ago, people were figuring out a lot of what people claim today is like proof. But I don't know. I mean, Bitcoin wins again and again and again and again and again. So I feel like, as young as I am, I feel like a wily vet at this point.
Well, you are very young. You've been named like on Forbes 30 under 30, all that. Your work with Strike has been so impressive and admirable. So can you tell me, like, how did you come to build Strike?
Yeah, well, I'm also known to just rant forever. So you got to keep steering me in the right direction, make sure people are enjoying this. So I go to a coding boot camp, and my first projects were chess software and shit, whatever I was interested in. Then I started working on Bitcoin stuff. And I wanted to get a job. Another thing, I was not born with a silver spoon. My dad was like, yo, you want to like move the fuck out and like be an adult, like on your own time, I guess. But you might want to like figure it the fuck out, man. We can't just like go to boxing class together and trade GBTC into your 40s. And so I applied. I applied everywhere. I applied to every Bitcoin company, and no one would hire me. Coinbase wouldn't hire me. And this is long before like scaling bait and shit. But Coinbase wouldn't hire me. BitPay. I got one unpaid, unofficial internship. So it was honestly a question if I could put it on my resume at a company called ChangeTip, which got acquired by Airbnb. I don't know what happened, but I was tasked to build their Google Hangouts tip extension. And it was not paid, and it was unofficial. It was really just a favor that the founder was doing because he was friends with my parents. And that was my first foray into like working on Bitcoin, quote unquote. And then I hacked on all sorts of open source projects. So anyway, I had no real leg into the Bitcoin industry. No one was hiring me. No one thought I was worth anything. I ended up then getting a normal job. I was a software engineer at a startup here in Chicago, a relatively big startup. I think there were between 100, 200 employees. And when I joined, I was feeling super confident about my skills and myself. I felt like I had a lot to prove. No one would hire me. No one thought I was good enough. And through my coding boot camps, I had built amazing relationships and mentorships with some amazing famous founders like Jason Fried. And I felt like people are underestimating me. Just because I didn't go to college doesn't mean I'm not smart. And I walked in there, and within 6 months, the company had pivoted to software I had built and patented it. And my name now is on the patent. So I would stand up in front of the CEO, in front of the whole company, like, you're doing your job wrong. Our roadmap's wrong. And in the beginning, they're like, who hired this 22-year-old, and get him the fuck out. And I just didn't care. I knew I was right. And eventually they're like, fine, if you think that this prototype is actually going to save the company, build it. And so I would show up at 5 a.m. at this job, and I would work on the prototype, and I would do my 9 to 5, but it really only took me 9 to 12. And then at 12 o'clock is when I would log on to Slack and hang out in the Lightning Network Slack channel. The Lightning Network at the time was just, the white paper had came out, I don't know, 8 months ago or something. I don't know the exact timeline, but LND, the Lightning implementation Strike uses today, was available on testnet. So I'd hang out. I was asked Elizabeth Stark questions. I think I was like the 4th person in the Slack channel, and I would download and test software. So from 12 to 5 at my actual day job, I was trading Bitcoin and hanging out on the Lightning Network Slack channel. And then 6 months into that job, I was right. The software I'd built was finalized. I showed it to the CEO, and then they ended up patenting it, putting my name on it as an official creator, which I appreciate and respect. And then I left amidst the scaling debate to do full-time Bitcoin stuff. And that's when I started Zap.
Zap, that's right. And you got some pretty big investors, right? Roger Ver, I think. Like, how did you, and I guess, how did you, pivot that from Zap to Strike?
No, none of that's true. Zap. So, okay, the timeline for people that are trying to piece this story together. I started working at Label Insight, was the name of the company, in late 2016. Call it November, say, or September. So I'm trying to do the math myself. And I left in April of 2017. Mind you, 2017, Natalie, is when Bitcoin famously went from about $1,000 to, here's another hilarious story. I pray that the audience was enjoying these. In a group chat with my friends in the summer of 2016, I said, we were like, where should we go to New Year's? What should we do? Right. And when you're 21 years old, you don't have money to plan New Year's the week before. It's like, if we're going to go on a trip and stuff, let's buy our flights now. It's like fucking August. And I said, here's what we should all do. It's like 15 of us. We should all buy Bitcoin and put it in like what we would call like a group fund. And they had never believed me about Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin price was $300. And I said, I think this thing is going to go through the roof. Oh my God. I know my dad's first Bitcoin was like $10 or something. And so I'm like, let's all buy as much Bitcoin as possible. I was running to the bank. I was taking out all my chess winnings in my savings account at Bank of America, at Chase, taking it out in cash. And I would do like local Bitcoin trades. I was a kid buying as much as I could. I was like, let's all buy as much Bitcoin as we can and call it the Bitcoin fund. And come December 1st, if Bitcoin hits $1,000, like I think it's going to, we're getting the most expensive bottle service that 21-year-olds could buy. It's going to be a fucking blast. And if it goes to zero, it's not like we're not used to playing beer pong in our parents' basement. So we got nothing to lose. And they did not listen to me. Nobody listened to me. I'll never forget, for this exact reason, January 1st, 2017, Bitcoin traded at exactly $1,000. And the reason I remember that is because I will never let my friends forget it. They robbed me of a great New Year's. And so 2017 is the year that Bitcoin then went from 1,000 to 20,000. And
that's the year I got in.
There you go. And so then as it started to hike a little bit, it was around April 2017, and I was hanging out in the Lightning channels, and I had built the first version of Zap at my real job. And that's when I was like, I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills and stuff, but fuck this. I'm not working at this company anymore. This is stupid. I literally walked in here, changed the whole company trajectory, got it patented. And then I'm like, I'm out. This is dumb. And I quit. And then it was August. So then I worked I moved home to my dad's place again and worked on actual building something of Zap that would work. It was actually functional and I could launch it.
And
then
Zap was what? What was the
just an open source wallet. So at the time, yeah, sorry, I'm leaving out a lot of context. At the time, there's a huge civil war in Bitcoin known as the scaling debate.
Right.
And it was about how do you scale Bitcoin to all of these use cases that we see today, like instant and free remittance. Mm-hmm. It was at the time, there was a lot of business and corporate culture that wanted to make the block size bigger. What that would do is that would change the consensus rules and effectively invalidate Bitcoin's credibility. And the rest of us, first of all, knew that that wasn't a sound engineering approach to solving the problem. It wasn't actually a good solution. And then also it would kill Bitcoin entirely. And so it was like all hands on deck. I wore like the UASF hat and like army gear every day. I was like fighting for this thing. I was 22 and I felt like people like Roger Ver were threatening the quality of life of my family, right? This is Maller, Chicago. You're not going to manipulate and turn Bitcoin into corporate culture. Fuck you, get the fuck out of here. And I was so fired up about it. I quit my job and I said, I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. I'm going to move back home into my dad's house. But here's what I will do is I will build an open source Lightning wallet to just show the world that Bitcoin can scale correctly. We do not have to hard fork. We do not have to compromise on its qualities. Lightning works. Lightning is real because at the time, as cool as the Lightning Network is now, nobody understood it. We had a white paper, and if you wanted to test it, you had to be an engineer and like run command line code. And so my idea was, why don't I build a wallet that just all I want to do was just allow Roger Ver to visually see a Bitcoin transaction settle instantly and at no cost. And then I would figure that's the best way I can contribute to Bitcoin surviving the civil war is just humanizing the Lightning Network and showing it is the future of this asset and the future of payments and the future of the world. And so I published a blog post announcing Zap, a Lightning Network wallet. And it's up today. You can read it. It was, I don't want any investors. This is not a company. I had no interest, Natalie, in building a business. I was like, this is open source. And it wasn't even supposed to get users. I was like, I just want the community to use this to push Bitcoin forward. We could try new features on it. We could try new designs. I just wanted it to be an education vehicle and something that it was my gift to the community. And so I quit my job between April and August. I built it and I published that blog post. And for the next 2 years, Strike wasn't founded for years after that. I worked solely on Zap and just trying to push Lightning forward and push Bitcoin forward. And eventually scaling debate, there's Bitcoin Cash and Lightning ended up being successful. Bitcoin Cash is worth -$. You couldn't pay me to hold that piece of shit. Yeah,
no, that's so fascinating because this happens to me when I do research on people. Like you read articles and like literally I remember it said like Roger and all these big people were investors in your company. And
I'm telling you, all this has happened so fast for people that think I'm like a trust fund, silver spoon. My dad founded the Lightning Network and he passed me. It couldn't be further from the truth. I do think we have a cool story and I have the best dad on the face of the planet.
Yeah.
But no, it's been weird. All this has happened so fast and I don't know where people come up with their theories.
So interesting.
Not that I care about them, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, okay. So tell us about Strike then, because I do want to focus on all the exciting things that you're doing. You have a big announcement at the Bitcoin conference, right? So how did Strike come to be?
So, okay, we'll continue this story. I'll make it a little quicker though. So 2017 in August, I create this Zap thing. And it becomes one of the more popular Lightning Network wallets, probably because it was like one of the only, not because it was like the best thing ever. But it was also the first time that I, as a product person, and I'd come from building a successful product that's now patented, was taking an approach like, let's humanize Bitcoin a little bit. And let's try and build a well-designed wallet that, we're not jamming cryptography down everyone's throat. And so from 2017 through 2019, I did exactly that. And we tried different things like, should we obfuscate the concept of channels? Should we obfuscate the concept of sats? And like all of these things that people now know today, like human beings worked on that. And I was one of them amongst many. And during that experience, Natalie, I had a front row seat into Lightning. And so I got to see everything up close, personal. I was one of the first mainnet Lightning transactions with Charlie Lee ever. That's also public. And so I was there for all of it. And my favorite story that I tell all the time to investors or CEOs of other big public companies is when I bought pizza from a friend in the UK. So the story goes, I had a friend in London. We were on IRC chats, and we wanted to recreate the pizza transaction, the famed Bitcoin pizza transaction, but do it on the Lightning Network just for fun. I don't know. Again, I was like living in a small apartment in Chicago with my buddy, hacking in my room all day, living off like Bitcoin appreciating. And he said, if you send me a Bitcoin Lightning payment and you give me your address, I'll buy a pizza. And I did. And what I learned in that moment is that I just did something Western Union couldn't do, Visa couldn't do, Chase couldn't do, Barclays couldn't do, Gold couldn't do. I was in shock. I was sitting in my room. I had made a cross-border commerce payment with no intermediary. It's settled in less than a second. And the person receiving it, there's no cost to either party. Then the thing that I had sent, what did I send? Did I send paper dollar? No, that can't move over an ocean less than a second and at no cost. Did I send a gold bar? What did I send? I sent physical bearer instrument that carried enough value in Chicago as it did in London. And it had enough liquidity and enough presence that they were able to give me a good or service in return for it in the form of pizza. And in that moment, I thought to myself, hold on a second. This is bigger than just Bitcoin scaling. Like up until that point, I was like, well, we don't want to pay high transaction fees when we withdraw from Coinbase. We don't want to clog the chain. We want withdrawals from Kraken to be free. It was never about, at least for me personally, it was never about like, hold on, this is better than Western Union. For me, it was those type of moments sitting in the front row of the Lightning Network, being like on the front lines of testing all the shit where I was like, hold on just a second. This is bigger than just scaling Bitcoin. And then I went through, that was the tail end of 2019. And I famously went through this thought experiment where I was trying to prove myself to be the idiot I know myself as. I'm a dumbass. I was constantly in the dean's office, right? Like I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I was the kid that plays chess with the homeless guys. And so I'm like, hold on, I'm not smart enough and lucky enough to be on the forefront of a financial revolution with the superior premier payment network and payment standard of the world and the equivalent of what the internet did to communication, this will do for money. There's no way, right? Like, what am I missing? And I went through this exercise. I did a lot of like interviews with normal people, A/B testing, a lot of things. And I developed these thesis of, first, what I learned is no one wants to spend their Bitcoin. Again, Natalie, this sounds dumb in, what is it, the year 2022. It wasn't back then. It wasn't like people were like, Dell Computer was accepting Bitcoin payments, expecting people to pay with Bitcoin. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. No one wants to spend Bitcoin. Why? Because Bitcoin just appreciates. And the longer you hold it, you just get wealthier. Okay, fair enough. So it's kind of hard to build a mainstream Bitcoin wallet if you force people to spend their Bitcoin. Okay. The other thing, taxes, is that no one was accounting for how to report this to the IRS. The other thing, volatility. A lot of these merchants have bills to pay, have operations. They cannot stomach 2 months of volatility. As we learned from COVID, if you dry up a brick and mortar bar 2 months of their cash, they go out of business. They aren't planning for dry cash, for volatile, so they can't deal with that. And I had built a lot of these theses. And then that's where the MVP of Strike was built, is I figured, hold on, Cash App, Venmo, all of these, there's a huge wealth transfer going on, has nothing to do with Bitcoin, but people are leaving, walking into the Chase bank on the corner, and they're just downloading Cash App. They're just downloading Venmo. If I could recreate that experience, but use a superior monetary network under the hood that's open, that has economies of scale, that's global, then I would be able to make a Lightning payment with my dollars, So I wouldn't be able to spend it. It would not be taxed. It would not be volatile. And as a merchant, I'd be able to receive a Lightning payment as dollars. Now, if I wanted to use those dollars to buy Bitcoin or whatever, all the power to you. I don't give a fuck. But the whole point was creating a superior payments and financial experience with a superior monetary network under the hood. And so here's the last part of the story. I very famously went to the Strike open source community, and I had been funding a lot of the developers. Bitcoin now is at $20,000, right?
Yeah.
So I've been funding these devs, and I said, hey, I have a hackathon idea for you. Let's connect my Chase account to a Lightning node and let me make a Bitcoin payment with my dollars. And they were like, what the fuck are you talking about? They actually were messaging.
Wow.
Everyone was messaging each other like, has Jack lost his mind? Like, is he like a fiat maximalist now? And but to their credit, I love those guys. I owe them everything. And we built it. We built it in like 90 days. No, what? Far less, 45 days. We built it over Christmas break in 2019. And then in 2020, I wrote Announcing Strike. And yeah.
This is amazing. I think everybody's going to love this story because it's just like the behind the scenes is so cool. It makes you appreciate the product so much more. I use Strike. I used it. It was the only Lightning wallet that I used in El Salvador. But just before we continue to the last couple of questions for maybe the people listening or viewing that are just really new to Bitcoin or don't understand how Lightning works. You mentioned some really interesting points that it means you don't have to spend your Bitcoin. You don't run into tax issues. You don't worry about volatility. Can you break down, like in simplest terms, what is the Lightning Network and how does it work?
Yeah, so the Lightning Network does not offer those properties. Strike does. But yes, I'll give my best shot at explaining all of it. So Bitcoin, we know it to be valuable because it has a scarce supply, known issuance. It is censorship resistant, is unconfiscatable, is global, has all of these amazing properties of a money, of a property, of an asset, of a commodity, however you see it, that no other asset in the history of the universe has. Okay, how is that possible? It lives within a distributed network. It lives without a central governed party, and it is truly trustless. How is that possible? So when I make a Bitcoin transaction, here's what happens. I'm the king of bad analogies, so bear with me. But it would be the equivalent of if I held a megaphone to the whole world. And I said, hey, world, I'm going to send $5 worth of Bitcoin to Natalie. And that message goes out, and everyone that wants to listen to that message needs to listen to it. They're going to verify it and then attempt to append it into the history of transactions of Bitcoin, known as the blockchain. And they're going to make sure, first of all, does Jack have the Bitcoin he wants to send? Is Natalie capable of receiving it? How do we know that? Did Jack cryptographically sign, or is someone acting as Jack? And they're going to do all the proofs and do all the cryptography and don't trust verify, and then append it into the blockchain. And mind you, many people are screaming to the world all at the same time. How do you know which message to hear first? Well, I can append a fee to mine and say, hey, world, pay attention to me, not that guy. Pay attention to me. I'll pay you $10 to pay attention to me. Well, what if he pays 11? Then I'll pay 12, right? And you have this free market aspect of Bitcoin transactions. And so how long is it going to take the world to do all of that work, proof of work and stuff? How long is it going to take? I don't know. They seem to, on average, append new transactions to the history of transactions every 10 minutes. And how much is it going to cost? It depends. If no one's paying anything, I'll pay a penny. If everyone's paying everything, I'll have to pay thousands of dollars. I don't know the truth. And so what that results in is a truly censorship resistant, trustless, distributed network that not only allows you to make a transaction despite any state or corporation wanting you not to, but it allows you to defend a monetary policy. The reason Bitcoin is 21 million and that's it, and we know the issuance, is because no one can change that either. It's very important to the thesis of why this thing has value. And what this results in then is that there's an undefined variable for how expensive it is to make a traditional Bitcoin payment, and it's an undefined time to how long it will take to actually settle. So if I were to go in a coffee shop and I would want to buy a coffee, how expensive is it going to for me to buy it in Bitcoin, and how long is that transaction going to take? We do not know. And it's very important that we do not know. It's a good thing that we do not know. If we were able to know, then Bitcoin supply would be changed to 120 million, right? And whatever, right? Okay, so that's Bitcoin. So what Lightning does is it sits on top of Bitcoin and just changes it a little bit. And it optimizes to solve for those two variables, the variable time it takes for a Bitcoin transaction to be final and the variable cost. And the reason it does that is instead of having a megaphone and talking to the whole world and saying, this is what I'm doing, my Lightning payment to you, Natalie, lives just between you and I. Nobody else needs to know about it. Is I say, hey, I want to send you $5. We do a quick cryptographic handshake, boom, done. And for that reason, it is extremely fast and is extremely cheap. And the reason we can afford to do that, why doesn't other blockchains just do it, is because we have the base layer below us, where if we were to ever get in a dispute or an argument and disagree on our transactions, the base level Bitcoin blockchain can verify all of our proofs and what cryptographic signatures we have, and then settle the dispute in a distributed fashion. And so because we have a censorship resistant, sound, reliable base layer, we could build optimized standards on top of it that solve things like speed and cost.
But Strike obviously also has those additional features and benefits, right?
Yeah,
and how do you do that?
The thesis of Strike is, here we have an open network. So the beautiful thing about Bitcoin and Lightning is the standard is open. You don't need any permission. You don't need to apply to the Swift organization to get into the Swift messaging protocol. Like you want to be in Lightning, go on the internet, download a wallet, implement it yourself. And so Strike has just a particular experience on what I consider to be an open, it's not the right experience. There's no right experience, right? Like, Natalie, what do you like better, Safari or Chrome?
I like Safari.
Okay, is Safari the correct browser? Maybe for you, but no, some people like Chrome, some people like Tor, some people like Mozilla, doesn't matter. And so Strike offers a very particular experience where we allow you to make Lightning payments with your dollars. Mm-hmm. And so that way you don't have to spend your Bitcoin. You don't have to deal with taxes. You don't have to deal with volatility. So if you want to buy a coffee in El Salvador, you don't have to spend out of your HODL cold storage stash. You could spend straight out of your Chase account and use this superior monetary network. And then on the receiving end, we allow you to receive these Lightning payments as dollars. And so we're talking about a monetary network. There's no MDR, there's no interchange, there's no issuing and acquiring bank, and it's global. And so that's just Strike's particular experience on an open network. But I'm also a Moon Wallet user. I'm also a Cash App user, right? It doesn't mean we're the right one, but we're a very unique one in that sense. And we definitely invented that idea.
Amazing. Well, so you have a lot of experience with talking to institutions and executives about the power of this and how it can transform our global financial system. So can you give us an idea of what it's been like to talk to these folks that are, in charge of really big tech companies? I know you've talked to like Facebook executives and, folks in Silicon Valley, but also the IMF. Like, why aren't we seeing more institutions coming in? Why aren't there more Michael Saylors and Elon Musks and Jack Dorseys?
One of the realer answers is we need a little bit of regulatory clarity. It's not necessarily clear from a regulatory sense. I'll just shoot it straight. Shitcoins are the worst, because people get deeply confused by like, hold on, is that a security? We don't want to violate. We're regulated by the SEC. We're a public company. What's that? What's the difference between that? Like, if shitcoins didn't just arbitrage this trend and weren't scamming everyone, we'd move at a much quicker pace. But the real answer, to be quite honest, is they are coming, and it just takes time. I think that people are on Twitter, like, Command R, refreshing for a dopamine hit. Like, why isn't it now? But then 10 years from now, when you look back and you realize that you can walk into a grocery store and use any Lightning Network wallet you want, that merchants finally have choice to route their payments through other payment standards and other monetary networks, and there's open competition and remittances are free and all of these things, you're going to be like, holy shit, did the world change fast? Chase is a business that's 150 years old, and boy, did that happen quick. So I don't know what's fast, what's slow. Yeah, if shitcoins didn't exist, if we got a little bit more regulatory clarity, I think things would be quicker. I think I wouldn't have to sit in front of executives and explain why Solana is clearly a violation of securities law. It's very clearly not a technical innovation. It's very clearly the same as Visa, just new people heading it. But I think the truth is it is happening extremely fast, and people just got to relax.
Well, I know you're working on things, you're having conversations in real time, and I know you probably can't share too much, but give us a little taste, a preview, like, can you hint at what you might be revealing or what we might learn at the Bitcoin conference?
I tweeted a graphic that was pretty forward. I think that we need to get more merchants on board. We need to get more merchants on board. I think, right now, this is all true, by the way. The DOJ, Department of Justice here in the United States, is extremely upset with banks because there's been like this relative monopoly over payments by banks here in the United States of America. And merchants have filed antitrust lawsuits. The DOJ has filed antitrust lawsuits against banks because their claim is they're artificially inflating interchange pricing, card swipe fees, all of these fees, and it's crushing small business. But the real problem and pain is that this is the only industry in America that does not allow for free open market competition, so that pricing is artificially set by a corporation, or debit card interchange is set by the Federal Reserve. And so I think that if we really want to take the next step, getting merchants on board, what is known as the acquiring side of a transaction, would go a long way. I'd be able to walk into a grocery store and I could use my Lightning node over Tor. I could use my Moon wallet. I could use my Cash App. I could use my Strike wallet, and consumer choice would be valued. Consumer preferences would matter. Open competition would suppress pricing. The payment space would finally see some real innovation, and we'd finally have true financial inclusion. I'd say to the Elizabeth Warrens of the world, listen, you think Bitcoin's a highly speculative asset? That's fine. It's your appetite. I can't criticize you on that. But I'm talking about no American left behind on an open payment standard. If there's a commercial bank that doesn't accept a certain profile of an American, they can go build their own Lightning wallet. They can download an open source one. There's no American that can't then walk into a grocery store and be a customer. And that's what this country is about. I want to reinstill American freedom, supporting entrepreneurs. I want to live in the United States of America, Natalie, where Jeff Bezos, Jack Dorsey, Elon Musk, Jack Mallers sits on the same footing to create my checkout experience at Whole Foods than Jamie Dimon. That's America I want to live in. And so I would just like to see more merchants on, and it's been one of my focuses in recent months.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, the last Bitcoin conference was less than a year ago, because last year's was in June. Now we're almost at April. And your big announcement then was El Salvador, right? And I remember you getting emotional on stage. That was really my first exposure to you. And you mentioned your dad was sitting right in the front row, right? You hadn't gotten a lot of sleep. Your dad was right there. How much has changed for you since then?
Oh man, a lot. Life's been fun. It's been interesting. It's been hard. It's been easy. It's been joyful. It's been painful. It's been stressful. It's been easy going, right? I don't know. It's been cool. I try not to think about it. Next task at hand. Every day is a challenge. The goal of every day, win the day and make sure you're ready for the next one. As long as you're better today than you were yesterday, you're moving in the right direction. Don't get too lost in the details. So life's changed a decent amount. But I don't know, as it should. I don't know, has your life changed since? I hope so.
Oh, yes, certainly. No one,
There you go.
I couldn't even get into parties last year, Jack. I would like go up with my best friend and they were like, you're not on the list. You gotta leave. We don't know who you are.
Oh, no,
I've been invited to a few of the Bitcoin parties at this conference.
there you go.
Well, to start to wrap up, you do so much work and you're so passionate about making a difference in like the average person's life. Why does that matter to you? And what is your goal over the next, 5-10 years? Is it just to make sure that more and more people are in Bitcoin and transacting in Lightning? Like, why is this important to you? And where do you want to go with this?
I think Bitcoin is arguably the most important invention in human history. It helps with everything. It helps do things like reinstill foundational rights and freedoms that you're in theory born with. It helps drive the world forward. So I mean, I don't know, there's a lot of ways to think about it. There's a lot of answers I can say, but one of the more practical approaches that is conceptually satisfying is, what else would you rather work on? I'm going to die. And there's no way for me to contribute more to society, help my brothers and sisters to my left, to my right, across the pond, across the ocean, across the border, than push Bitcoin forward and ensure it's successful. I believe in what it stands for more than anything. Code will continue to be developed. Everyone's going to continue to argue on things. There's going to be disputes. There's going to be hurdles. But Bitcoin as an education vehicle, what it stands for, what it represents, and the message it can instill for the world, that is something I'm willing to fight and die for. And so I don't know, what else would I rather do? Sell newspapers, get a business degree? This is the Super Bowl of being a human being, in my opinion. If you go back to what I believe humans inherently want, is be a part of something bigger than themselves, work on something that will last longer than they will. I think Bitcoin enables peak humanity, being interoperable and interconnected with everyone around the world through all walks of life. When was the last time you saw Aaron Rodgers, the president of El Salvador, and entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley all on the same team? I'll answer that for you. Never. It's a phenomenon in that way. You feel interconnected to the greater presence of being human. And I know, and I'm very confident, that if I were to die tomorrow, if I were to walk out, get a coffee, get hit by a bus, my work and my ideas would last longer than I will. And that is what it's all about. So I don't know another profession. I don't even think the Chicago Bulls point guard position would allow me to live as satisfying of a life. So for that, I'm externally and internally grateful, thankful, and happy.
Yeah, that's so true. Hey, pretty soon, I'm sure you could buy the Bulls, you could be point guard. Wait, so, right now it's really interesting to see Bitcoiners talk on Twitter, because we live in such crazy times, right? Like Russia's saying they might accept Bitcoin for payment. We're seeing the dollar sort of crumble as the reserve currency. So do you think about those things at all in terms of, will Bitcoin take over? Will everything be priced in Bitcoin someday? Will the dollar still exist? Like, where are you at with some of those questions that are debated in the Bitcoin space?
Listen, I think Bitcoin is the best money of all time. It's not particularly close. So do I think things should be priced in Bitcoin in theory? Yes. Do I think people should use Bitcoin more? Yes. Do I think people should save in Bitcoin? Yes. So do I believe in hyper Bitcoinization and society and relationships and civilizations and everything will flourish more the more Bitcoin is involved? Of course I do. How much do I think about it on a day-to-day? Rarely at all. I don't know. I think there's a lot of like more practical problems to solve. I don't go to bed at night and dream that tomorrow Bitcoin is going to usurp everything ever. I think there are very tangible steps that I think that's inevitably my goal. I don't even know if I've thought far enough to have the ambition to know if I'll be alive during true hyper Bitcoinization or not. I don't know, but I don't want to get distracted by it. I swear to God, I sit in some pretty cool meetings, meet some pretty cool people, and there are some pretty tangible steps that we can take to push this thing forward. And I don't know, when you start a basketball season, you don't necessarily envision how you're going to celebrate the championship, right? Let's just go to practice, get better, lift the weights, and ensure we're ready for game one. And that's kind of been my approach my whole life. So do
you see any threats to Bitcoin? Because even when you talked about the visit you had to the IMF on another podcast, it sounded like even the people that are essentially against it, the central planners of the world that are threatened by Bitcoin, even they are secretly writing you notes saying like, hey, like I believe in this too. We're going to go in this direction, right? So are there threats to Bitcoin, like legitimate long-term threats, or do you don't see any?
No, not legitimate long-term ones. Potential short-term ones, sure. I don't know. Anything can happen. But again, I'm in this to the day I die. I really am. And so for that reason, and dealing with the time frame that is my life, no, I don't see any realistic threats to Bitcoin as a project and as a movement and as an idea. I do not see any threats. And I will say, on the note of people like the IMF being interested in Bitcoin, my main message to the IMF is that Bitcoin is a tool. It is not politically leaning. It has no bias towards any market movement. It just exists in the same way a hammer exists. You can build a house, you can harm someone with a hammer. It's actually the holder of the hammer that could be faulted for malicious crime or credited for an invention. It's not the hammer's fault. And so I think so, for example, with the DOJ, the Federal Reserve now wants more competition in payments in the United States. They want lower pricing for merchants. They want banks to loosen their control over what is deemed relative monopoly in payments. And I think the IMF, the Fed, the DOJ, Bitcoin is a great tool to achieve what they want. You want lower pricing for remittance, you want lower pricing for payments, you want more inclusion, you want more innovation, you want the Jack Dorseys of the world to be able to have access to improving more and more lives. An open payment standard is about as good as it gets. So that's been my relative messaging. And I think it's interesting is that Bitcoin carries this brand that's totally inaccurate. And so I think you'll start to see, I think Bitcoin's very American. I think the Fed and the IMF should have a lot of interest in Bitcoin achieving what, according to them, now, are they men and women of their word? I don't know. But according to them, their goals of more inclusion, more innovation, lower pricing, cheaper access, better experiences. I think this is the best tool we got as human beings. So.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I actually, I think it's all inevitable. I don't want the price to go to like 100K yet because I actually celebrate the price suppression so that I can accumulate more because I wasn't in it as long as you people. Like I need a shot before it's too late. But no, thank you so much. It's really inspiring to talk to you. I just think your work is so incredible. You as a person, as a human being, so inspiring and incredible. And I just think we're really lucky to have someone like you in the space. And so I guess my last question is just, if you could kind of teleport yourself back to when you were young and like have a conversation like you at this age, talking to your younger self when you were kind of, not sure what you wanted to do. And I don't, maybe even before Bitcoin was around, but like, what would you tell your younger self?
Oh, goodness. I don't know. I think I really like the Steve Jobs quote is trust in something. Trust in your intuition, your heart, your beliefs, because life will take you down unwalked path, uncharted territory, and it is those principles that'll end up guiding you through. I believe that, and my story is true. And if I could put the 18-year-old version of myself a little bit at ease, it's just don't stress too much about it. But yeah, I think a lot of the guiding principles my grandfather instilled in my family and that my dad instilled in me have led me to the career that I have. In a way, I'm tremendously surprised and humbled and grateful for the role I played in El Salvador. And there is in a weird way, I'm not surprised at all. That's just a Mallers being a Mallers. That's just a Chicago kid that was raised by this city and this Bitcoin community. And so I think my guiding principles, my intuition and stuff, just trusting it. And I'm glad I didn't get a business degree.
So well said. Your family must be so proud of you. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me.
Yeah, thank you. And I must say, I really enjoy the opportunity to tell these stories. And to the Bitcoin community, if it isn't clear, I owe everything to this community. And this community truly did raise me. I was not raised by the board of the CME. It is not true. I was raised by Shinobi, Mr. Hodl, all the old Bitcoin Twitter accounts I've been following for years. And so just a huge thanks to this community and the support. Having to retell these stories is bringing up all sorts of emotions. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm a pleb, forever a pleb, no matter what. And I love this community like a parent. That's how I look at them. So
thank you so much for checking out this episode of the Coin Stories podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Brunell, and please remember to subscribe to my page and like this video so other people have a chance to see it. Till next time.